In 2003 and 2004, after I left Judicial Watch to run for the U.S. Senate in Florida, I have no more thoughts of that. We're waging a revolution now. An individual came up to me at an event in Fort Lauderdale and offered his help. He's an expert on terrorism. He's a courageous guy. He's taken on the Council for Islamic American Relations. He himself was sued by Islamic interests for challenging their connection to terrorist activities in Dallas, Texas. He's put his life on the line. He's now running for U.S. Congress in the 23rd District in South Florida, which is Fort Lauderdale and surrounding areas, against the unbelievably stupid Wasserman Schultz on the Democratic Party, head of the Democratic National Committee, someone who has no concept of reality. I introduce you to my friend, Joseph Kaufman.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Freedom Watch. Thank you for inviting me to speak at this important event today. An event that calls out the president for his and his cohort's role in corrupting the institutions of our nation in a way that threatens to destroy everything our founders fought for and our troops died for. My name is Joe Kaufman, and as stated, I am running for United States House of Representatives. I am doing so against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, one of the most radical members of Congress. Wasserman Schultz is the chairwoman of the Democratic National Committee, or DNC. As such, she is the face of the Democratic Party, and this is not a face that any Democrat could be proud of. Indeed, instead of representing the interests of Democrats and all good Americans, Wasserman Schultz, to the detriment of her country, has used her position to defend everything that Barack Obama has said and done, regardless of the consequences of the president's actions. When it comes to our nation's health insurance, both Wasserman Schultz and Obama have worked overtime to deceive all Americans. Earlier this month, she admitted this when she was a guest on the Bill Maher show, proudly stating that she, the president, and a good many other Democrats told people that under Obamacare, if they liked their health insurance plan, they could keep it. Of course, this was a total lie, as millions of Americans have been thrown off their health plans. I spoke with one woman, Kim, whose daughter, because of Obamacare, had lost her health insurance plan. She said that her daughter had an eating disorder, a pre-existing condition that was not covered by Obamacare, and now she is left without insurance and her personal well-being is now in jeopardy. And when Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Barack Obama traveled the nation telling Americans that Obamacare provided for competition and choice, that too was a lie. In fact, Obamacare has only strengthened the monopolies that existed prior to Obamacare coming into existence. Friends, healthcare needs to be reformed inside the United States. Costs are too high for people to afford, and not enough people have coverage. But this is no reason for the federal government to take over the entire system, to get so involved that healthcare costs are raised, not lowered, that people are kicked off of their current plans, that businesses are forced to dump their workers, that doctors are driven to leave their profession, and that the economy is damaged to such an extent that it is hard to recover. We have the solution. Health insurance companies need to be allowed to compete across state lines. Tort reform needs to be enacted to stop unnecessary and unwarranted lawsuits from taking place. Menu pricing for doctors and hospitals could allow patients to know the cost of their procedures before getting the bill. And pre-existing conditions can be covered by the implementation of risk pools, like auto insurance companies do, to mitigate the costs across the board. Doing these few things will allow all Americans to experience affordable health care, real affordable health care. And it can be done without the heavy hand of government. But before any of this can happen, Obamacare must be repealed. Delays are nice, delays are comforting, but in the end, if we want to have an economy, if we want to keep our nation free, Obamacare must be repealed. Mr. Obama, you can take your Affordable Health Care Act and keep it. America does not want it, never did, and never will. When it comes to our nation's debt, Barack Obama only cares to pile on more.
It's unpatriotic!
When asked about it, he changes the subject to the deficit, believing that America's citizens are ignorant and don't know the difference.
Low information voters.
Our government's obsession with spending already caused our credit rating to go down. According to the CBO, if we continue on this path, our national debt will be unsustainable. We can bring down the debt, and the way to do it is by bringing up our nation's energy. We have more natural gas inside the United States than most anywhere in the world. 200 plus years worth. It's clean, it's cheap, and it's abundant. We just have to go after it. Unfortunately, the White House is ruled by a handful of radical environmentalist outsiders who despise all fossil fuels. These are the same individuals who stopped the Keystone Pipeline project that would have created thousands of jobs for Americans. It's the same group that caused President Obama to take up a war on America's coal mining industry, which destroyed thousands of American jobs. And it's the same group that if they have their way, we will be living in darkness and driving our cars like the Flintstones. Fossil fuels expanded food production for all, helped create the automobile and aviation industries, got America through 2 world wars, and propelled the Industrial Revolution. While renewable fuels are getting better and are promising for the future, today's reality is the great fossil fuel.
Yes, it is. Air Force One flies on it.
When it comes to our kids' education, the left-wing progressive movement, championed by Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi, attempts to dumb down American children by forcing them into failing schools that cannot compete with global educational standards. Studies show that American school children rank in the 20s in the major scholastic categories as compared to other nations. One of the reasons is that there is a lack of school choice. Countries which provide choice for parents to place their children in better performing schools have far greater educational advancement. Choice means competition, and competition is good. But for Pelosi and Obama, their only choice is the Department of Education, which devours taxpayer dollars. When a charter school does poorly, it shuts down. When a public school does poorly, it gets more money. It's time to stop spending the money on the bureaucrats and start spending it on children. We need to close down the Department of Education and send the power back to the states. When it comes to our taxes, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Obama have a simple plan: tax more. They like to refer to increasing taxes as revenue, but the truth is they've got it backwards. You don't get revenue by raising taxes, because that scares away business and stifles growth. No, you get revenue by lowering taxes, by encouraging business, by putting people to work and manufacturing new products. A couple years ago, a coalition of major corporations including Pfizer, Cisco, Apple, and Microsoft, approached the Obama administration, saying that if the federal government would significantly cut the corporate tax rate, which is amongst the largest in the world, that these companies were willing to repatriate their offshore funds back to the United States. Obama's answer has essentially been to raise their taxes even more. Both Wasserman Schultz and Obama practice class warfare. They demonize the wealthy who create jobs for Americans. Their policies of higher taxes and nonstop regulations cause small businesses to shut down and large businesses to move overseas. That's thousands of jobs lost for the middle class who fill these jobs. Obama and Wasserman Schultz like to say that the Republicans are for the wealthy and the Democrats are for the middle class. But under the presidency of Barack Obama, the rich have gotten richer and the middle class have become the nation's new poor. In fact, today there is the biggest gap between the rich and the poor since the 1920s. We need real tax reform inside the United States. We need to cut the corporate tax rate to repatriate funds back to the U.S. Then, we need to deal with the archaic income tax code. I'm proud to say that I served as the Broward County co-chairman for Steve Forbes for president. And I'm proud to have been amongst the first to call for a national flat tax to replace the income tax code and to call for an end to the IRS. I'm also proud to have been named by Herman Cain as part of his Army of Davids, supporting Cain's 999 plan. While the numbers may need to change, the greatness about the plan was that it provided for both a flat and a fair tax, both of which are positive for America. When it comes to our troops, we need to support them, as they risk their lives to protect our freedoms. But at the same time, we need to recognize that we cannot and should not be involved in every war overseas, unless and only unless the group or nation we are fighting poses a direct threat to American interests. When President Obama stuck his nose in Egypt and supported the overthrow of Hosni Mubarak, we wound up with the Muslim Brotherhood. Mubarak was an ally to the U.S. and an ally to Israel. The U.S. had invested billions of dollars and billions of dollars in weaponry to the Mubarak government. Under Mubarak, Christians were safe and women could walk freely without having to wear an oppressive veil or burqa. Under the Brotherhood, Egyptians had Sharia law imposed upon them, as Mubarak was imprisoned and left to rot by President Obama, who wouldn't lift a finger to assist our former peace partner. Thankfully, the situation has changed, and Obama's Islamist Brotherhood friends are no longer in power. Because of this, Obama has made unwarranted demands of Egypt's new moderate leadership. These demands have pushed the nation into friendship with Russia, as Egypt understands that Obama is no longer an ally of theirs. Following Mubarak's overthrow, President Obama decided to lead NATO into war against Libya. One of the first things to occur when then-President George W. Bush went to war with Iraq was Muammar Gaddafi handing over his WMD program and renouncing terrorism. Because of this, there was no threat posed from Libya either to the United States or to our friend Israel. Now, I shed no tears for Gaddafi. He was a murderer who had American blood on his hands. But why replace a non-threat with a threat? Indeed, the only reason to go to war with Gaddafi was to replace him with an Islamist government. And that's exactly what happened. President Obama's war with Libya left a void that was filled by Islamic extremists, including many who were associated with Al-Qaeda. In fact, the current Deputy Defense Minister, Khalid al-Sharif, was the second in command of the Al-Qaeda-related Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, LIFG. This, while our troops are currently in Libya conducting combat training for the Libyan military. How pathetic. While our troops are being killed by Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, President Obama sends them to provide training for Al-Qaeda in Libya. Obama's Libya war also got 4 Americans killed in Benghazi. Ambassador Chris Stevens was sent on a suicide mission by Obama and Hillary Clinton to provide weapons and training to Islamist insurgents. He and the others were killed by the same people he went to help. He was sent to help. That blood is on Obama and Clinton's hands. After Libya, President Obama stuck his nose in Syria and got the United States into a proxy war with Russia, who is allies with Bashar Assad. As I feel about Gaddafi, I shed no tears for Assad. However, I don't believe that the United States should ever get involved with terrorists. The fact is that Assad, Hezbollah, and Iran are fighting against the Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, and elements of Al-Qaeda. Their civil war is terrorist versus terrorist. And again, America should never be involved with terrorists, period. As for fighting against Russia, Presidents Reagan and Bush Sr. worked hard to forge a peace with Russia. President Obama has all but obliterated that peace. President Reagan told Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the wall, while President Obama erected a new one between America and Russia. We have enough enemies around the world. We don't need Russia as an enemy as well. None of these wars should America have gotten involved in. Not one. But President Obama has aligned the White House with those with a radical agenda. He has appointed to positions in the U.S. government leaders of Muslim Brotherhood-oriented groups, including the head of ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, Mohammed Magid. Just 2 months ago, this same group, ISNA, lost its tax status in Canada over links to terrorism. Previously, the group had been named by the U.S. Justice Department as a co-conspirator to the financing of millions of dollars to Hamas. Their agenda is to see Islamists take over the Middle East, and they don't care whether they're Sunni terrorists or Shiites plotting to build nuclear weapons. Remember, prior to the Arab Spring taking place, President Obama had the chance to stand with pro-American Iranians who were taking to the streets to protest against Ahmadinejad and the mullahs. Obama ignored their pleas, while he jumped at the chance to support Islamists in Egypt, Libya, and Syria. He ignored the pleas of pro-USA Iranians. And had President Obama helped those Iranians then, we might not be discussing a potential nuclear Iran today. Does anyone believe that President Obama would ever attempt to stop Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons? More and more it seems as though Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry are desperate to cut a deal with Iran. Both Obama and Kerry will willingly throw Israel under the bus to get a deal done. But a nuclear Iran doesn't just threaten Israel, it threatens us as well. Friends, we live in a defining moment in our history. Today we've been given the choice. Either we fight for our freedoms, our Constitution, our economy, our country, or we allow everything that our founders worked for, everything that our troops died for, to disappear. When my great-grandparents came to this country to escape Hitler, they, like many others, saw opportunity. They were able to build a better life for their children than they had it. And my grandparents, and my parents after them, were able to build a better life for their children. Today, my wife Emily and I ask ourselves if that same opportunity to grow and prosper in America will be there for our baby daughter. We all have priorities, many of which are of great importance. But today, our priority needs to be protection of America. President Kennedy told us to ask ourselves what we could do for our country. And I say the same thing. Every morning when we wake up, we need to look in the mirror and ask ourselves how we could put America first. Today, how can I put America first? Putting America first means downsizing big government. Putting America first means creating an American healthcare system that is affordable, but that does not allow for government intrusion into our lives. Putting America first means lowering the debt while raising American energy so that we can once again be energy independent and not have to rely on places like Saudi Arabia and Venezuela for our fuel needs. Putting America first means having school choice and a flatter, fairer, and simpler tax system. Putting America first means supporting our troops, but also understanding that we cannot get involved in every war overseas. Putting America first means defending our Constitution and all of its amendments, including the Second Amendment right to bear arms and the Fourth Amendment right to privacy. And putting America first means sending home those in seats of power who ignore problems and refuse to protect our great nation, the greatest nation on earth. Myself, I've decided that I'm going to put America first by replacing Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Congress with the help of good people like you. Thank you so much. God bless you, and God bless these United States of America. Thank you.
I want to thank Joe. He's a great American, and while we cannot endorse or oppose political candidates, take Joe what he says on the merits, because he makes a lot of sense.